You know what nobody tells you about building wealth? It doesn't feel linear. You grind for years, watching your bank account crawl up by a few thousand here, a few hundred there, and you start wondering if any of this actually matters. But here's the truth. Wealth isn't a ladder you climb one rung at a time. It's a flywheel, heavy as hell at first, barely budging no matter how hard you push. You're sweating, your muscles are burning, and the damn thing won't move. Therefore, when it finally does start spinning, when momentum kicks in, that's when everything changes. Not gradually, suddenly. There are three specific numbers that act like checkpoints in a video game. Cross them and the rules of money fundamentally shift. Your relationship with work changes. Your stress about the future evaporates. The whole game gets easier. Let me show you what I mean. Picture this. You're 28 years old. You've been doing the right things for 3 years now, maxing out your 401k contribution, brown bagging lunch, saying no to weekend trips because you're saving. Your friends think you're cheap. Your family thinks you're obsessed. And you check your investment account and it says $47,000. $47,000. After 3 years of sacrifice, you're not even halfway to 100K. This is where most people quit. They look at that number and think, at this rate, I'll be 60 before I'm a millionaire. What's the point? But what they don't understand is that they're on the edge of the most important milestone of their entire financial life. They're about to cross into a completely different game. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's right-hand man for decades, said something that sounds almost violent in its intensity. He said, "I don't care what you have to do. If it means walking everywhere and not eating anything that wasn't purchased with a coupon, find a way to get your hands on $100,000. Why would a billionaire care so much about someone scraping together 100 grand? Because that first $100,000 is the absolute hardest money you will ever make. It's powered almost entirely by you. Your discipline, your sacrifice, your ability to say no when everyone around you is saying yes. Let me show you the brutal math. You've got $10,000 invested. The market does pretty well this year, gives you a solid 7% return. Congratulations, you just made $700. $700. That barely covers a car repair. One modest emergency and your entire year's worth of investment gains vanishes. Therefore, at this stage, the market isn't helping you. Your investments aren't working for you yet. You are the engine. Your savings rate is everything. The $500 you manage to scrape together each month, that's worth more than any stock pick, any hot tip, any investment strategy. And let me tell you what this phase actually feels like, because the numbers don't capture the psychological warfare you're waging with yourself every single day. You're at brunch with friends. Everyone's ordering mimosas and avocado toast. The bill comes to $45. You could afford it, technically. You have the money in your checking account, but you're making the math in your head. $45 invested at 7% for 30 years becomes $342. You're literally choosing between Eggs Benedict today and a car payment's worth of retirement money in 3 decades. So you order the cheapest thing on the menu and drink water. And your friend Sarah makes that face. You know the one. The "are you okay financially" face. And you want to scream, "I'm fine. I'm just trying to build a life where I don't have to work until I'm 70. But you don't say that, because explaining compound interest at brunch makes you sound like a cult member. This is why so many people fail before they start. They're looking for shortcuts, for the magic investment that'll 10x overnight, when what they actually need is the stomach to live below their means for years, to be the weirdo at brunch, to drive the paid-off car while everyone else finances shiny new ones, to stay in on Friday nights while Instagram shows you everyone else living their best life. But when you finally hit $100,000, everything shifts. That same 7% return is now $7,000. $7,000 that you didn't have to work for. That's like getting a raise without asking your boss. That's multiple months of your hard-earned savings just appearing. And psychologically, you've proven something to yourself. You've proven that you're not like everyone else who talks about someday but never executes. You've built a machine that works. You have a six-figure net worth, and nobody can take that away from you. Because here's what that number represents. It represents hundreds of small decisions. Every time you meal prepped instead of getting takeout. Every time you negotiated a raise instead of quietly accepting what they offered. Every time you automated your investment contributions before you could talk yourself out of it. Every time you said no to lifestyle inflation when you got a bonus. All of those decisions, they compound too. Not just financially, but psychologically. You've rewired your brain. You've built financial discipline the same way someone builds muscle, through consistent resistance training. So you keep going. The flywheel's spinning now, easier than before. You're adding your monthly contributions, but now the market's adding too. Month after month, year after year. And then one day, you check your account and you're staring at a number you didn't think would arrive this fast. $500,000. This is the crossover point, the moment where your money starts to rival you. Think about your job. Maybe you make $60,000 a year, maybe $80,000. You trade 40, 50, 60 hours of your life every single week for that paycheck. You sit in traffic, you attend meetings that could have been emails, you smile at your boss even when they're being unreasonable. Now imagine you have $500,000 invested. The market has an average year, gives you 7%. That's $35,000. The market has a good year, gives you 10%. That's $50,000. Your money just earned as much as you did while you were sleeping, while you were on vacation, while you were arguing with Karen from accounting about the stapler. Therefore, you've reached what people in the financial independence community call coast fire. Even if you never contributed another dollar, even if you stopped working entirely and just let that 500K sit there, in 10 to 15 years, it would grow into enough for comfortable retirement. You don't have to coast, of course, but you could. And that changes how you think about work. That job you hate, the boss who makes Sunday nights miserable because you're already dreading Monday, the commute that steals 2 hours of your day, the corporate politics that make you want to fake your own death and move to a beach town, you don't need it the way you used to. The desperate, clawing need to hold on to that paycheck at any cost starts to fade because you've done the math and you know that even if everything went sideways, even if you lost your job tomorrow, you'd be okay. And here's what nobody tells you about that psychological shift. It makes you better at your job. When you're not operating from scarcity, from fear, you negotiate better. You take smart risks. You speak up in meetings. You don't tolerate toxic situations because you're terrified of losing your income. Therefore, the security of $500,000 often leads to earning even more because desperation repels opportunity, but abundance attracts it. People can smell fear and they can smell confidence. When you know you don't need the job, suddenly everyone wants to give you better opportunities. I know a guy, let's call him Marcus. Marcus hit $500,000 in his early 40s. He was a middle manager at a tech company. Decent salary, but he felt stuck. His boss was a nightmare, the kind who'd send emails at 11 p.m. and expect responses. Old Marcus, the Marcus with $80,000 in savings, would have just taken it, would have responded to those emails, would have nodded and smiled and slowly died inside. But Marcus with $500,000, he walked into his boss's office and said, "I need you to respect my boundaries or I'm out." No backup plan, no other job lined up, just the confidence that comes from knowing his money was working for him whether his boss was or not. His boss blinked first, changed his behavior, and 6 months later, Marcus got promoted into a completely different department with better work-life balance and a $20,000 raise. That's the power of the crossover point. It's not just about the money, it's about the leverage the money gives you in every other area of your life. So you keep building. The flywheel's spinning fast now. Your contributions, the market's returns, compound interest doing its magic trick where it turns thousands into tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. And then one morning, maybe it's a Tuesday, maybe you're drinking coffee in your kitchen, you open your investment app and you see it, $1 million, 7 figures. You remember being that 28-year-old staring at $47,000, wondering if you were wasting your time. You remember the brunches where you ordered water. You remember the friends who thought you were crazy. You remember the moments where you almost gave up, almost decided to just live like everyone else. And now you're looking at $1 million. There's a rule in the financial independence world called the 4% rule. It says you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio every year adjusted for inflation and never run out of money. It's based on historical data, market research, decades of analysis. 4% of $1 million is $40,000 a year, every year, forever. Now, if you live in Manhattan and have 3 kids in private school, that's not retirement money. But if you're in a paid-off house in a reasonable cost of living area, if your kids are grown, your mortgage is gone, your car is paid off, that's freedom. And here's where the math becomes your friend in ways that feel almost absurd. A bad day in the market, the kind that makes the news, where everything drops 2%, costs you $20,000. That's terrifying if you're still thinking like someone with $50,000. It's just Tuesday if you're thinking like someone with $1 million, because you know it'll recover. You've seen enough market cycles by now to understand that volatility is just noise. Because on the flip side, a good year in the market, a 20% return, which happens more often than you'd think, that's $200,000. $200,000, more than what most executives earn in a year, more than most people will save in a decade. And you didn't have to do anything to earn it except not panic and sell when things got scary. This is the point where wealth becomes completely decoupled from your time. You could work if you wanted to, but the money you make from your job becomes optional, supplementary, a choice rather than a necessity. Therefore, you have what some people call FU money. And I know that phrase sounds aggressive, maybe even crude, but it's actually about dignity. It means when your boss asks you to work through Christmas again, you can say no. When that company offers you a promotion that requires relocating away from your aging parents, you can decline. When you wake up one day and realize you spent 15 years in a career you fell into by accident, not by choice, you can walk away. It means you can take that sabbatical you've been dreaming about. You can start that business you've been sketching on napkins for years but were too afraid to try because you needed steady income. You can go back to school. You can work part-time at a bookstore just because you love books. You can volunteer for causes that matter to you. Not because you're rich enough to never work again, though you might be, but because you have options, real options. The kind that let you sleep at night, the kind that makes Sunday evenings peaceful instead of dread-filled. And let me tell you something about options that nobody mentions. They change your entire relationship with fear. When you have $1 million, the worst-case scenario isn't homelessness or bankruptcy. The worst-case scenario is having to go back to work for a while. Therefore, you can take risks, real risks, the kind that might lead to failure but might also lead to the life you actually want instead of the life you settled for. So let's zoom out for a second. 3 milestones, 3 fundamental shifts. At $100,000, you prove it works. You've built the discipline, the habits, the machine. You've done the hardest part, the part where it's all you, all sacrifice, all delayed gratification. You've moved from theory to reality. You've trained yourself to think long-term in a world that's screaming at you to think about right now. At $500,000, your money becomes a partner. It's working alongside you now, earning as much as you do. The scarcity mindset starts to crack. You can breathe a little easier. You can see the finish line. You start making decisions based on what you want, not just what you can afford. At $1 million, you cross into optionality. You have choices most people only dream about. You can work because you want to, not because you have to. You can take risks. You can say no. You can live life on your terms. Now, I know what you're thinking. Cool story, but I'm 35 and I have $8,000 in savings and $40,000 in student loans. These numbers feel impossible. I get it. When you're staring up at $100,000 from the bottom, it feels like looking at Everest from sea level. It feels like a fantasy someone made up to sell books. But here's what you need to understand. The only difference between you and the person with $1 million is time and consistency. That's it. Not intelligence, not luck, not secret knowledge, not rich parents or inheritance or winning the lottery. If you can save $500 a month and invest it in a boring index fund that averages 7% annually, which is below the historical average, by the way, you'll hit $100,000 in about 12 years. Not overnight, not easy, but achievable. Therefore, after you cross that $100,000, the compound interest starts doing real work. You'll hit $500,000 faster than you hit $100,000, and you'll hit $1 million faster than you hit $500,000. Because that's how exponential growth works. The flywheel doesn't just spin, it accelerates. The first $100,000 might take you 12 years. The second $100,000 might take you 5 years. The fifth $100,000, maybe 18 months. The people who fail aren't the ones who start with nothing. They're the ones who give up in year 3 when they're sitting at $47,000 convinced it's not working. They're the ones who panic sell during a market crash and lock in their losses. They're the ones who compare their chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20 and decide they're behind. And look, I'm not going to lie to you and say it's easy. Those first years are brutal. You'll watch your friends buy new cars while you're driving a 12-year-old Honda. You'll skip vacations, skip dinners out, skip the dopamine hit of buying stuff you don't need. You'll feel like you're missing out on your 20s or your 30s or whatever decade you're sacrificing. But here's what they're not telling you. You're not missing out. You're opting out. You're making a choice that most people are too afraid or too impatient to make. Because while they're financing a lifestyle that impresses people they don't even like, you're building a machine that will buy you decades of freedom. While they're celebrating a raise by upgrading their rent, you're investing the raise and compounding your way to optionality. While they're posting about their new purchase on social media for temporary validation, you're quietly building wealth that'll give you permanent options. You're not cheap. You're not missing out. You're not being stupid. You're not depriving yourself. You're the smartest person in the room. You're playing a different game, a longer game, a game where the prize isn't a nicer car in your 30s, it's complete freedom in your 40s. Where the prize isn't impressing strangers at a party, it's never having to set an alarm again if you don't want to. So if you're sitting there with $20,000 or $50,000 or even $200,000 wondering if this whole wealth building thing is just something that works for other people, it's not. It works for anyone willing to push that flywheel until it spins. And once it spins, once you cross that first milestone and then the second and then the third, you'll understand what I'm telling you right now. Everything changes. And it's worth every single sacrifice you're making today.